Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary, a great episode. A lot of things went down this episode, so we got to break it down bit by bit. First of all, let's talk about the major, the case of the episode. It involves this dude named Gilbert being killed. It turns out Gilbert's connected to this company merger that was happening. He was actually looking into it. And then upon all of this, it's like, oh man, some shady stuff. Because I was actually kind of, as things were progressing, I was like, man, this case is moving by fast. Is it just because oh yeah, they're just doing that because all the main storyline progression stuff that's happening too. I'll get to that soon enough, but I was like, is that what was happening? It's like, no, it's just because the case was always kind of developing, because it kept being like, oh man, is the case already over? It's like, nope, just another step. Here's another step. Because we also find out later on, it's like, this is about cigarette smuggling. And then we find out, oh man, ATF is actually working undercover to deal with this. Oh wait, it turns out the two FBI agents, the ATF agents that are involved in this are actually bad guys, because they're actually building up this large fortune. Because there's the whole thing that Sherlock brings up too. He's like, it's super stupid that the ATF is just kind of like, oh no, you don't have to worry about giving us any of the money that you receive from this, and we'll use it as evidence. It's like, no, you hold on to it till the entire case is over. Because basically we end up finding out later on that they amounted about 26 million dollars in their accounts. At least equals about 30 million roughly. And it's just kind of like, holy crap. And like I said, I agreed with it. I was like, that is the dumbest thing. Why would you let that happen? Well, then it turns out that technically they weren't dirty. Basically, I guess superior, whatever, Hobbs basically was like, oh yeah, using that operation as a front. All that built up cash was meant to be a fund for them, a fund that's not being watched by either the company that they basically got it from or the government, so they can pull from it and do whatever they need to get through red tape to make big arrests and stuff like that. I'm like, man, it's like oh, and Sherlock says himself, the ends justify the means, because it's all for the greater good. And it's almost like, oh, but what about these two agents, the way they're dressed, the cars and stuff like that? It's like, if they were stealing, that was on them. But it's kind of like, I don't know, man. That's crazy. That's shitty that you would do something like that. It's so interesting because you make such justifications for being like, oh, no, it's for the greater good because we're funding these other operations that we'd have to go through the red tape. That's the whole point of checks and balances. I know it's not a perfect system, but it's in play to prevent crazy shit like that happening. That was mind-boggling. And he was just so nonchalant about it. He's like, yeah, this is how things are. Was there any recourse handed to him for doing that? I'm sure eventually his bosses found out, if they weren't already on the know, but a lot of agents were kind of getting a little piece of that pie. Once again, it's supposed to be for the fact it's oh, we're taking care of these ATF operations, but who's to say they weren't skimming a little off the top too? I doubt with this much money circulating, no one was just like, I'll take a little bit for myself. I do appreciate this little tidbit situation of just kind of to figure out this whole cigarette situation. Joan brought in the nose and everything, and then Sherlock's like, oh, I didn't realize he was here. He's like, I'm the ex, because I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I was like, oh, yeah, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, cigarettes are Sherlock thing. And he brings it up. He's like, you could have called me. She's like, I didn't know what you were up to. And it's like, why, you have a problem? It's like, no. And then the nose, it brings it up. Basically, some point in their past, Sherlock was doing something related to cigarettes, and the nose called him out as being completely wrong, and Sherlock hasn't forgiven him for. So it's kind of like a professional rivalry. It's like, no. Why'd you call my adversary about cigarettes? It should have been me that you came to first. Obviously, I'm the go-to. I'm right. So it's just kind of interesting, these little, that little tidbit of a storyline. I just thought that was kind of fascinating. So in the long run, it turns out that this is a little even more complicated, because one behind all of this, the murder of Gilbert, because he stumbled across all of this, it's also it's kind of interesting, because it's that took me by surprise, the two ATF agents killing each other, because it's oh, you stole the money. No, I didn't steal the money. You obviously stole the money. You're the only one who knew about it. And then they ended up killing each other. I was like, oh, obviously it's the crime scene is set up to make it look like, oh no, they legitimately killed each other. I was like, wow, I didn't expect things to end up that way for them. It's interesting because I didn't bring it up, but the actor who plays Tim, don't know his name, but obviously he was one of the interns. I think he eventually became a consistent member, but on Bones, he was one of the initial interns that eventually became a permanent stay. Just kind of throwing that out there. It's kind of interesting. First thing that kind of pops in my mind. But because it turns out that Maggie's the one behind all of this, she's the one that stole the money and stuff like that, because she was actually a corporate spy to a certain extent, because the dude that put her in that position, the dude that was part of this merger, knew about it. And so basically he was like profiting off this whole like smuggling cigarettes, which I didn't bring this up at the beginning. Didn't know that was kind of like a big operation thing, but that's interesting. And then it turns out like that's what, because John had brought it up, like, oh yeah, like, because even Sherlock couldn't figure out, it's like, why is it that even with all this money that they're getting with their operations, like, their arrest records, or like rates are down. So it's like, did they just get lazy? But it's like, no, because he was there profiting from the situation. Like, he was profiting from the smuggling. So he had an inside source from Maggie about the ATF, because he already knew that, oh, like, it was already inside. So it's just kind of fascinating. So like I said, it's just this weird system of like corruption, yet not corruption, but turns out to still be corruption. It's just like, so it ends up being this crazy situation. So, and corporate espionage, but then also not even espionage. Also, it's also smuggling, and there's just so many layers to this case. It just made it like, I was like, wow, that was just kind of, like I said, it was an ever evolving thing that was kind of getting me. I was like, is this the end? Is this the end? It's like, now we're finally at the end of it. So that was kind of a great case. But then on top of that, the real juicy part of the episode, obviously being like the main overarching plot. So it's like when Sherlock finally told Joan about it, even she was like, okay, so what are we in danger? Sherlock's like, well, Moriarty might take over our organization again, but she's kind of fond of the world being where it is, with me in it. And she's like, oh yeah, and plus you being my partner and everything, she's grown fond of you too. And Joan's like, oh thanks, that's very reassuring. But it's like, yeah, like Moriarty's kind of made it clear in the past that she's super like appreciates Joan, because before she didn't really think much of Joan, but now it's like, given enough time, she's always kind of been like, oh yeah, you actually impressed me a lot more than I gave you credit for, Joan. So that's another reason for that. So I'm sure also in her, because for her it's like, as long as you're not in my way, she would never do anything to them. I would assume. I think that's kind of an assumption like Sherlock probably has come to as well. So. But a real kick in the teeth is the fact is that his dad was like, I never wanted to have to ask you to do this, but you have to help me kill her before she kills me. And even Joan brings up that question. It's like, what are you going to do about that? Sherlock doesn't really give her an answer, because it's like, how do you answer that question? She brings it up again later, after he confirms that it is Moriarty behind all this. But it's like, how do you? He's like, because even he's like, I'm vexed, because it's like, on one hand, it's my dad. He's like, if this had come up before this season, I would have just laughed in his face. I don't care. Let Moriarty kill you. Why should I give a shit? But now, because of the whole situation with Mycroft, it's kind of like his dad's the only family he has left. So there's that part of him that's kind of gotten to that point where he's kind of letting a lot of his hate in the past kind of go. So it's all about like, no, I can't just, do this, just sit back and let something happen to my dad. But at the same time, no matter how much crime stuff she's always done, like Moriarty's still the woman he fell in love with. I mean, as even over the course of this series, like we've literally seen him be with like, other than Moriarty, one other person. Just like hooking up with people, sure, but like being in love like he was, that's not something that's come across that many times. So it's kind of like, which kind of puts her in a special place in his heart. Like no matter what she's done, he's always kind of like, you made the argument she is his weakness, in that regard. Which I think adds a layer of, to the dynamic between Moriarty and Sherlock, because they did have a relationship in the storyline, But then Joan also asked a question like, well, what if you don't do anything? It's like, well, because of the resources and power, all that would end with, it's like, oh yeah, that'll turn into like a bloody mess, a lot of casualties, a lot of collateral damage caught up in the middle, so can't do nothing either, so. He ends up talking to the representative for Moriarty, and that is Ellery, which it kept bugging me. I was like, every time, like when he first saw her in the cafe, I was like, why does that actress look so familiar? And I think I know what she's from. I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's the actress who plays, it's been a while, so I might be getting her name wrong, but I think it's Megan on the TV show Outcast. She's Kyle's sister in that show. I think that's the same actress. I was like, I'm looking at her, I'm like, that's got to be her. It just kind of clicked in my head. But her being the representative and everything like that, I kind of figured it was like, of course we're not going to get Moria. I was like, oh my God, are we going to get Moria? It's like if it does become a thing, like I said, once again, it probably comes down to like for one, probably like a payment situation, but also whether or not she's like super busy or not. It's like Natalie Dormer. It's like, come on, stop teasing. I want to see her pop back in the show. That'd be so good. It's actually kind of interesting because I forgot to talk about this, or I thought it was kind of a fascinating thing that Moreland was like, oh yeah, like it's not your fault that you didn't know about her escaping. It's because like the FBI made damn sure to keep their mouth shut about this because it's like such a big person like Moriarty getting away. You do not want anyone to know you let that criminal Goliath get away from you because that'd be the worst thing ever. So of course you're going to be hush hush about that. But what's kind of interesting about the whole situation was the conversation. Now, I might have misheard him, or maybe he's just lying to his dad. But didn't he say, like, okay, the only way we could do this is by killing my dad? But maybe I misheard him. I thought that's what he said, because then when it came to his dad, he was like, oh, how do we handle the situation? It's like, so basically it's a ceasefire on both sides. How? Because I promised her that if she killed you, I would take over the organization. And she doesn't want that, because no matter what, Moriarty has an affinity for Sherlock. You know, there's still love on her side as well. So just as much as she's a kind of a weakness of his, he's as much a weakness to her as well. And then Moriarty, she'll let things kind of stay for now, and Moreland has to do the same thing. But even Moreland's like, you know, this won't last forever, son. Eventually, like, things will change, and like I'll be gone, but you'll still have to deal with the Moriarty situation, but you'll be dealing with it by yourself. But he's like, that's the point. Moriarty is my problem. It has to be mine alone, which is like, whoa. And his dad like, well, we'll talk again, because he's talking about the fact is like, because for Moriarty, it means just letting things kind of be as they are now, because it's like, well, he can keep doing what he's doing, but eventually it's like, oh, you'll die soon enough anyway, so it's not like she has to wait a super long time. But like, I swear, like I said, not unless I'm imagining it, but didn't he say killing his dad would be the option? Which, like, I thought, like, is that him bluffing for her? Or maybe he did say that, but maybe it was him kind of implying more so like, no, just let my dad die of natural causes or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of interesting too, like, that she would just let him continue dismantling the organization like that. Maybe it's just kind of like in her mind, it's like, well, the damage he causes will be minimum to what I can do when I get the organization back. I'm curious to see what she does. Like, if she did get the group back, like, what would she, I guess she'd pick up right where she started, but it's like, that's the thing. Like, your dad being in that position, at least he's potentially trying to do good, but it's like, that means if Moriarty gets back in, I don't know. I guess you could make the argument, it's like, Moriarty brought balance. It's kind of like, yeah, this is going to go on with or without me, but at least I'm here to kind of keep things more in line, kind of act as a check and balances for this cabal organization. So it's hard to say. It's not like it's kind of a lose-lose situation, because it's like the last thing you need is someone as powerful and as organized and as smart as she is running a group that big. So, but at the same time, it's like maybe she could prevent them from, like I said, keeping some kind of world balance. I don't know. Because we haven't really kicked back to that organization in a while, so other than like what we've gotten updates about from Moreland, like these past episodes, is kind of about it, you know. So I'm curious to see in the long run what that all kind of turns out to be. I don't know. It's a very interesting situation. Because I get the feeling no matter what the case may be, even though it buys him enough time, I still think Sherlock is still trying to find a way around the situation. Because like I said, like, at the end of the day, it will eventually come down to that no matter what. He will have to deal with Moriarty. And the fact is, he says it kind of makes me think he doesn't even mean Joan too, because for him, it's like Moriarty might, you know, be a factor for her as well, but it's still like my problem. I'm the one that kind of brought this into Joan's life, so Moriarty, it's mine above anyone else's responsibility. So I'm wondering what will he do in the long run? Will he put her down if he has? I'm sure if he has no choice. I would assume we're going to be seeing more of Ellery in the future, potentially. Anytime she wants to get a message across, you know, Moriarty wants to get a message to him, it's that. But He also made sure not to tell his dad about where she is. Like, he knows that she's has connections to that cafe, so if he found out, his dad would most likely try to take action himself. So I'm assuming he's going to hold the ceasefire for now, but once again, it's like, even with the ceasefire being what it is, even like, oh, just wait till Moreland's dead, it's like, no, like, Moreland's going to find a way out of it, just because Moreland is like, well, it's my own life in danger, and maybe in his mind, it's like, he'll justify it by being like, well, I'm helping my son out. He doesn't realize it and doesn't want my help, but he needs my help. So it might end up eventually causing more problems between them, because it's like, oh, we repaired our relationship a little bit because of the whole Mycroft situation, but it's like, oh, now because, like, you know, it's like, oh, is he doing this just to make sure he keeps his own life and continues doing what he's doing? Or is it because he's like, oh, no, I'm trying to protect my son from a future threat that he's not willing to handle himself? It's like, I know he, you know, probably in his mind, it's like, I know Sherlock will never do it, even if he's presented the opportunity, even if it's just him and Moriarty and he has no choice, he might not do it. So to ensure my son stays alive, he might act, but maybe it's one or the other. Maybe it's a combination of the two. Who knows? We would just have to wait and see, like, what happens with this crazy situation. Like I said, it's so crazy because, like, this is happening while we still have not dealt with the Michael storyline. Like, that's still ongoing. Like, he still hasn't circled back to New York, but maybe that's going to be something like, it kind of like a lot of those storylines kind of come to a head together. Like, he's kind of balancing the two potentially. We will just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.